Welcome to the Suicide Prevention Series brought to you by the Public Hospitals Authority. It is September, and that means that we are smack dab in the middle of Suicide Prevention Month. This month is dedicated to raising awareness about the root causes of suicide and the mental health challenges that may lead to suicidal thoughts and ideations. As we've been learning, those thoughts can be triggered by a wide range of mental health challenges, including depression and post-traumatic stress. And while we've spoken a lot so far about how we can work to prevent cases of suicide, the reality is that we may not always be successful. Joining me now to talk about the impact of suicide on the family and friends that are left behind is staff nurse Jacqueline Bonaby, who is the Suicide Prevention Committee chairperson at the Sandlands Rehabilitation Center. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so Nurse Bonaby, can we talk about what advice you would give to someone who has suffered loss due to suicide? So the friends and family that are left behind, what do you say to them to comfort them?
Okay, so firstly, in giving advice to a grieved person who has lost a loved one to suicide, in giving the advice, one needs to be careful and avoid making excuses or explanation about suicide.
Got it.
Suicide is a complex public health issue. It has many contributing factors. In 2021, the World Health Organization reported that globally, there were more than 700,000 persons who died due to suicide.
Wow.
Every year. Suicide, it is preventable. It is everyone's business, and everyone is at risk.
Mm-hmm.
With that being said, the healthy advice that I would give would include be there for them by being supportive and understanding. This helps them through the grieving process. Also, listen and validate. The griever, they need to be listened to and heard. Don't minimize their loss. Don't use cliche, for example. Don't say to them, they're in a better place, or you are young, you can have another child. Studies have shown that these type of comments, they are more hurtful than helpful to the grieving person. Tell your loved one's story. By telling your loved one's story, you can tell who you want to tell and when you want to tell, as long as you want, without any time limit.
Okay.
Ensure that they have a safe environment and support group. By accepting the practical and the emotional support from your family members and your friends, this helps you through your grieving process. And finally, don't forget, seek professional help. In that the cognitive behavioral therapy helps you to understand your grief, and so you are better able to express it, prevent you from having emotional burnout.
Let's talk about understanding your grief, because grief is a very complex emotion. There are a lot of factors, there are a lot of layers. What is complicated grief?
So complicated grief is a persistent, complex bereavement disorder. It involves prolonged and intense mourning, making it difficult for you to come to terms with the loss of your loved one or their death. The signs and symptoms includes that it's similar to common grief, in that during the early stages of grief, which involves denial, anger, and bargaining. Complicated grief also involves having an overwhelming emotion. That is where you have the anger, the guilt, and the extreme sadness,
Right.
which if go untreated, can result in suicidal thoughts or behavior. Who is at risk for complicated grief? Everyone is at risk. women are more at risk than men, and you find that persons who have a history of mental illness, they are at higher risk.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, when it comes to treatment for complicated grief, the cognitive behavioral therapy or complicated grief therapy helps you to become more aware of your negative thought patterns.
Right. You mentioned earlier about, telling your loved one's story in a way that you want to. When you're talking about, when you're talking to others about your loss, how do you go about that in a way that is, um, I guess, both positive and healing for yourself as well, if you are someone who is suffering through loss due to suicide?
Okay, in talking to someone about your loss, one has to be sensitive, meaning you have to remember that not everyone know how to appropriately respond to your grieving stories. You have to be appreciative of your listeners because you have some listeners, they too have to get over their barrier of suicide in order for them to be there for you. Choose your audience. In choosing your audience, you are able to choose persons who are empathetic in their listening. And they can help you through your grieving process.
I guess as a final point, the issue of suicide is obviously a very complex one, as you mentioned. It's one of the things that is preventable, but again, it does occur. And so, how do we as a community help each other sort of navigate the mental health challenges that exist so we don't, end up with cases of suicide at such a high rate?
So in our community, we have numerous local resources available. And I would say to persons out there, if you feel something, say something. If you know something, reach out. And you can reach out to the Community Counseling and Assessment Center, or you can reach out to the mental health professionals at Sandalins Rehabilitation Center, or the Crisis Center, and even people helping people. And with all these resources, including others, you will be able to get help because therapy is beneficial.
Thank you very much, Nurse Bonaby. Really appreciate you being here. We'll have more from the suicide prevention series in a moment. Are you or someone you know struggling with suicidal thoughts or ideations? You don't have to go it alone. You can reach out for help. Call the Crisis Center at 328-0922, People Helping People at 698-0155, the mental health professionals at the Sandalins Rehabilitation Center at 364-9600, or the Community Counseling and Assessment Center at 323-3293.